Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a psychological quirk that might just explain every single terrible meeting you've ever had to sit through.
Okay, let me start with a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Have you ever been in a meeting, nodding along, saying, yeah, great idea, only to find out later that nobody in the room actually wanted to do it? I mean, how does that even happen? How does an entire group agree to something that literally none of them want?
Well, to get to the bottom of this really weird dynamic, we have to go back to where it all started. And the story involves a family, a brutally hot day in Texas, and let's just say a very long, dusty car ride that nobody, and I mean nobody, actually wanted to take.
So picture it. It's a sweltering Texas afternoon. You got a family just chilling on their porch, maybe sipping some lemonade. It's calm, it's peaceful, right? But then, the father-in-law pipes up with what seems like a totally harmless suggestion, and oh boy, does it change the entire course of their day.
And this is where it all starts to go wrong. This cascade of, well, fake agreement. The father-in-law says, hey, let's drive to Abilene for dinner. Now his daughter, she's thinking, are you kidding me? It's boiling hot, it's a super long drive. But does she say that? Nope, she doesn't want to disappoint him, so she says, sounds great. Then her husband, who really just wants to stay put and relax, sees his wife and father-in-law are seemingly on board. He's not going to be the party pooper, right? So he says, sure, let's go. And finally, you have the mother-in-law. She'd also much rather stay home, but she figures, well, if everyone else is so excited, and she goes along with it too.
So what happens? They all pile into the car. They suffer through this hot, miserable 4-hour round trip, eat a pretty awful meal at some random cafeteria, and they finally drag themselves back to the exact same porch they started from, totally exhausted and, you can bet, pretty cranky. And it's only then, right back where they started, that someone finally musters the courage to say it, you know, I didn't actually want to go. And then, it's like a dam breaking. One after another, every single person admits they only went along with it because they thought everyone else wanted to go. Unbelievable, right?
And that little story perfectly illustrates what we're talking about today. It's called the Abilene Paradox. It's this bizarre situation where a group of people collectively says yes to a plan that every single person in that group secretly wants to say no to. It's the ultimate paradox of false agreement.
It's a pretty funny story about a family trip for sure, but, you know, the stakes for a bad dinner are pretty low. So what happens when this exact same dynamic plays out somewhere with much higher stakes, like, say, your workplace? That's when the little trip to Abilene turns into something a lot scarier. We call it a zombie project. And you'll see the pattern is identical. A VP, maybe just spitballing an idea to look proactive, throws out, hey, what about a new software migration? Deep down, they're not even sold on it. The team members, they have major doubts. They're thinking, this sounds super expensive, super disruptive. But come on, who's going to be the person to challenge the VP? So to avoid looking like they're not a team player, everyone just nods. And suddenly, this half-baked idea gets called a great initiative, and boom, a massive, costly, unwanted project is off and running. And in the real-world case this is based on, this zombie project just shambled along for 6 months. Can you imagine that? Half a year of meetings, of emails, of work, all poured into something that nobody from the very beginning actually thought was a good idea. And the cost? Financially? A cool $100,000. That is a huge amount of money to burn, all because no one in the room felt they could ask a very simple question. Hang on a second. Is this actually the right thing to be doing? So, okay, what's the real lesson here? Because it's about more than just bad dinners or wasted cash. The real danger of the Abilene Paradox is that it reveals this fundamental blind spot we have about how groups really function. Think about it. We spend so much energy in our professional lives learning how to manage conflict, right? How to deal with people who openly disagree. But what the Abilene Paradox shows us is that our failure to manage agreement can actually be way more dangerous. You know, conflict, at least it's on the table. You can see it. But false agreement? That's like a silent killer hiding behind this illusion that everyone is totally on board. So why do we keep falling for this? Well, it's pretty simple. We're human, we're social, we don't want to rock the boat. We're scared of upsetting the boss or being labeled as the negative one in the room. We tell ourselves that our silence is just us being polite. But here's the kicker. In a professional setting, that is a really dangerous assumption to make, because your silence isn't seen as neutral. It's almost always interpreted as agreement. So, the big thing to take away from all this is just to be more aware. Be aware of that pressure to just go along with the group. both in yourself and in the teams you're a part of. Sometimes all it takes is one person asking a simple question like, okay, what are the potential downsides here? Or, hey, have we thought about any alternatives? That alone can be enough to break the spell of this false agreement.
And you know, the Abilene Paradox is just one of these weird cognitive traps that groups can fall into. The source material for this explainer actually mentions a few others, like the Cobra effect, that's where your incentives totally backfire, or the region beta paradox, which explains why we sometimes stick with less effective solutions. So here's my final thought for you. The next time you're in a meeting and everyone is agreeing just a little too quickly, I want you to remember that long, hot road to Abilene. Asking that one simple, clarifying question might just save your whole team from taking a very long, very pointless trip. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.